Werner, about 5 years ago when I met you, you were playing the piano and had a setup, and I learned of your YouTube page, and I quickly learned that there were so many different styles of music that you were playing, and you had different repertoires on your YouTube channel for the different composers that you were emulating. And so I'd like you to talk today a little bit about the different styles of music that you play and what draws you to pursue this one or that one, and how the evolution of that has taken place in your life.
Okay. Fair enough. Of course, my favorite composer is Johann Sebastian Bach, so I mainly play his music if I play other people's music. But these days I actually prefer to play my own music when I perform and record videos and stuff like that, for different reasons that we can maybe get into a little later in the conversation. It has to do with improvisation, and that being very much the most important part of music, in my opinion. But apart from that, there's many composers that I also very much enjoy playing. Chopin, Mozart, Debussy, Ravel, Couperin. There's a whole bunch of them, right? That I enjoy very much.
Are these of a specific period between 1600 and 1800?
Yeah, something like that. You know, I'm not totally fond of avant-garde music that is atonal, as we call it. Partly because my audience would probably leave if I started playing that music. So that's a good reason. But I also very much enjoy playing folk tunes and the popular music and jazz music and themes from these different styles and improvising on them. So that's part of the fun.
What was it in your early childhood that nurtured, or is it just natural? Do you feel that you were drawn to music?
My mother was a pianist, quite a good pianist. She tried to teach me when I was 5 or 6, and a mother can't teach her son music. It has to be somebody else. And apart from that, it was a social imperative in Denmark at that time to play what we call football. You call it soccer here, with my friends. And if I was just sitting there playing piano all day, that would not be good. So I said, enough of this, I'm gonna just be with my friends. So when I was 13, I stumbled over an old 78 LP recording of Beethoven's Appassionata, played by a Russian pianist lady, Galina Svasenska or something like that. And I was completely hypnotized by that music. I played it again and again to death, and then okay, I have to play piano. So then I got a teacher that was not my mother. His name was Jens Jensen, very Danish name. And he was very inspiring because he was a great pianist. He didn't know how to teach, actually, even though that was his main job, the main income. But he was inspiring because he played well, and so we spent a lot of time playing four-hand piano music. I mean, we don't have four hands, so he has two, I have two, and that's four. By sight reading, the first thing that happened when I started was that I realized I could read music like a devil. It came instantly. So we were just playing four-hand piano music and inspiring ourselves with the music. And unfortunately, he didn't know how to teach technique. And also my mother's piano was very sluggish, so I had some challenges later in life trying to get my technical speed up. And So later I got a teacher at the conservatory where I wanted to study, and there's a very tough audition there where they only take maybe 5% of the people who audition, and so I needed to prepare for that, and so I got the toughest teacher at the conservatory agreed to teach me, and boy, he was tough. I had to practice a lot, and scales and technique, but I passed the audition, and then I started really working hard. And I was very young, I was maybe 16 or 17, I hadn't finished high school. So the last year of high school, I was both in high school and at the conservatory, practicing 8-10 hours a day, so there was not much time for high school actually. I didn't need it. You don't need to have any kind of education to be in a Danish conservatory. You need to be talented and work hard. You don't need any paperwork. So I just took it very easy with the high school, but passed and all that kind of thing. And then it was off to really work hard, and for the next maybe 8 or 10 years, practicing 8 or 10 hours a day. And that was fun.
How did you support yourself during those years as a young adult?
Well, in Denmark, of course, I had jobs. So in the vacations, I was mainly a mailman and taking out letters. And in Denmark, we have 5-story buildings with apartments, and there's no boxes downstairs. You have to go up, all the way up, and deliver the mail. So that was good exercise. And in Denmark, of course, there's a lot of student loans you can get from the government, and they don't really care if you pay it back. So that was partly how I financed that.
You had the piano that you were working hard at, and at what point were you a professional? Was there a certain time where it's like, well, I no longer am teaching at a university, now I am...
Can you define professional?
Yeah, is there a definition? So what is a professional? You define it.
Well,
in modern society, we think of a professional who's making their income from producing music, but in piano, is there such a thing?
Well, one of my friends just told me the other day that the joke is that the difference between an amateur musical performer and a professional one is that the amateur practices to play the right notes. The professional practices so that it's impossible to play the wrong notes, which is a whole different level. So you go on stage and there's no way you can make any mistakes. I probably don't like that level of professionalism because the issue could be that it gets to be a little bit mechanical maybe. A lot of professional performers today, they don't like to take chances because that's risky. And they don't like to make mistakes because people are used to hearing recordings that are made in recording studios and very often spliced together with the best bits of many different rehearsals. So it sets a very high bar for perfection for the live performer, which is quite frankly unnaturally high. I mean, why not make a few mistakes? You can also, if you know what you're doing, you can make mistakes and then you can somehow do it in such a way that people don't notice it.
Tell me this.
And of course Miles Davis said, if you play a wrong note, what comes after that determines if it was a wrong note or the right note. In other words, here we're getting into improvisation. It's a little bit different in classical music, but there's a similar thing going on. You can, to some degree with your consciousness and the energy that you radiate to the audience, you can actually negate the so-called wrong note. They'll never hear it.
And so I think of that as disillusion. These are, I think, musical terms: disillusion and resolve.
You're talking about dissonance? Dissonance and harmony.
And the resolve of that dissonance.
Yeah, a wrong note can be dissonant. It can also be in harmony with the surrounding notes. Or still be a wrong note. But I know where you're going with this. The balance between dissonance and harmony is very important in Western music. Harmony is a Western music thing. It doesn't exist in any other musical culture on the planet, except for in the West.
So in the West, where we have 7 notes in an octave.
Yeah.
Or 11 notes.
Other cultures have 7 notes in the scale, but they don't have the harmony where you play them together so much.
I see.
In India, for example, you have 1 note as a foundation note, and then you have a melody that have very specific, very precisely tuned intervals between that note and the foundation note. But that's not harmony, that's a whole different thing.
I see. Let me take this in a direction which is relevant in my own household.
Yeah.
So my son is 12 now, and we have this debate going that I think we should only listen to classical music as we're traveling.
You think?
I think.
Okay.
But he says that if we listen to AC/DC or Metallica or some other heavy rock band, that his brain is in synchronicity as he listens to his preferable style of music, as my brain is when I listen to classical music. And I say, no, because classical music doesn't have the boundaries that the music we hear on the radio has, and that those boundaries prevent a true, these are my words, okay, not scientific words, but those boundaries prevent a true, what's the word? I'm grasping it.
I'm also grasping for it.
Yeah. So we have nonlinear sounds, nonlinear experiences, and linear. All right. So I think of classical music as nonlinear, and that nonlinear aspect means you could go unpredictable directions.
You think classical music is nonlinear?
Nonlinear. Yeah, that's how I describe it. And then I think modern day radio that we hear, right, the popular culture music, is very linear. You get from point A to point B, and right, it's repeated.
Okay, it's like a modern day Hollywood movie. You go from A to B, you see, it's very predictable, right? You know exactly how it's going to end from the moment you start, right? That's what we call linear film. And a nonlinear film is where you absolutely have no clue what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't call classical music nonlinear in that sense, because it certainly starts from the tonic, goes through some developments and end on the tonic. I mean, that's very predictable.
And you pick a key. I mean, it's in a key, and it
that's,
may vary, but it comes
That's what
back.
I call the tonic, but it's a certain key, The main harmony, the main note of that key is where it starts, goes through some development, ends always on the same key, right? That's very linear.
Okay, you're taking sides with my son.
Yes, you wouldn't tell him what food to eat, right?
Right.
And when he's on his own, you don't tell him what food to listen to. It's just when you're in the car with him that you. I understand you want him not to also listen to this music, because listening to different kinds of music, it gives a different set of what you call music vitamins to the young person's system. If they only listen to certain types of music, Metallica or whatever, then there might be some vitamins that they are never going to be associated with, and that could be a loss. That is what you are concerned about, right?
Yeah, I want him to develop to be as rounded as possible. And
Yeah.
so exposure to multiple things is valuable.
But he's probably pretty smart. He'll understand why Daddy wants him to listen to other types of music, right? Maybe.
Yeah, I think the goal of any parent should be that their children develop to be able to make those judgments on their own, right? We have the opportunity to steer them in a way that's meaningful to us and that we feel may be best, but ultimately, it'll be his judgment.
Yeah.
Now, I will add, so a lot of my questions stem from the musical talent in my household. So my son plays guitar, and he played cello for 3 years, and now he plays electric guitar. And we just started taking formal lessons. So up until now, at 12 years old.
Who taught him piano? No, I mean guitar and cello?
Well, so cello was with the homeschooling network in the community next door to where we live. And he got an interest in electric guitar because of AC/DC. And so then we stopped the cello lessons, and I have not ever said a thing about practicing ever since, because he practices every single day for an hour a day if he has the opportunity, because he loves AC/DC.
This has always been my experience with teenage boys. They can go on for a long time absolutely hating practicing piano and getting to piano lessons. When you finally find that piece of music that turns them on, they'll become a great pianist overnight. They'll just keep practicing and practicing until they get it. And then suddenly they can play piano. But without that inspiration, you're never going to get anywhere with a teenage boy. So I'm happy he found something that he likes.
What I hear you saying is a larger lesson in life that my wife and I try to bring into our home, and that is to keep doors open. We could be talking about any other subject that's not music, and for children, keeping doors open as long as possible is the goal, because that 5-year-old child isn't able to know what it is that is good for their own development. And so just saying, you know what, don't rule anything out. You know, you're too young to say absolutely not to anything that is known to be a good for the mind and good for the body.
Yeah, absolutely. So back to nonlinear. Classical music is linear music, in my opinion.
All right.
Improvised music is nonlinear.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Okay. I mean, it can be very linear, improvised music, but it can also be very much nonlinear. And that's probably one of the reasons I'm very attracted to improvised music and also improvised poetry. I like to try to improvise poetry. And improvised painting and improvised dance and improvised... I mean, you and I are talking now, right? Did we plan any of this? No.
Absolutely not.
This is called improvisation, right? Somebody says something, I say something. I mean, we never know what comes out of it. And so people say, I can't improvise. And they're talking every day to people. They're improvising constantly, right? It's just a question of getting that ability transferred to a musical instrument. And that is quite possible. There are certain things you need to know. You need to know the grammar of music. You need to know the language, right?
Okay, so a fundamental level.
A fundamental level of language and grammar in music is necessary for improvising, unless it's very nonlinear and completely all over the map, probably not so enjoyable. And as soon as you have those things down, you can improvise music. And you have to just keep doing it, because like everything else, we started speaking when we were very young, right? And then we've been speaking every day for many, many years. So if we had started improvising music when we were very young, and some people do that actually. There's a very famous concert pianist, Gabriela Montero from Venezuela. She's an accomplished classical concert pianist. She's also an incredible improviser. She started when she was like 3 or 4 or 5, improvising music, and she never stopped. So it's just like speaking.
Yeah, what is it about improvisation, whether it be music or something else, that is a goal worth aiming for?
We don't speak like this as if we are reading from a book, Levi. No, we're speaking like this. We are not reading from a book. We are living life and freely, and we are expressing that in speech. Isn't that more interesting than reading from a book?
Yeah,
Yeah,
very much so. I often think about this in terms of professional athletes. So children watch professional athletes, basketball, football, whatever your thing is, and they aspire to be like that professional athlete. Caitlin Clark is a female basketball player that has become very popular. And so for children, it's really the role of parents to put the building blocks in place, right? That foundation. And so for children to desire to achieve at that level or to mimic those professional athletes, they need to go to work and just start that process of repetition with those skills. And so it's much like music in whatever it is a person decides to focus on.
Yeah, and it's a good example in sports. You improvise, but you improvise based on rules and expectations. You have a team, and that creates boundaries. And you want to pass the ball to somebody, you don't want to just do it all on yourself. But there's a lot of improvisation going on. Suddenly, this guy comes out of nowhere and you have to suddenly change your strategy. A split second, right? It's just like playing chess, by the way. It's another one of my hobbies. Not very good at it, but it's a very musical game. A lot of improvisation. You have a plan, you have a strategy, suddenly the queen comes out of nowhere, completely obliterates your plan. You have to start a new plan, right?
Yeah. All right, I'm going to leap here. Okay, I'm going to leap because all of this has to do with the thing that was your profession for many years. But sometime in the last few years, I've observed you doing more of healing sounds. And that sometimes is drumming or vocal and groups of people. So I guess there's 2 questions really. One is, what was the stimulus to transition to more of that kind of thing, and where does it come from for you to desire that?
A good question. First of all, the relationship between instrumental music, like playing piano, and vocal music is very clear to me. Any instrumentalist wants to sound like he or she is singing on the instrument. We all want to be as close to the human voice as possible, because the human voice is a divine instrument. It's the perfect instrument. So everything else is just trying to be like that. And of course, being a pianist, thank God, I didn't have any vocal training at the conservatory except for singing in a choir. All pianists wanted to just hammer away at the piano and not sing. That came much later, and it was...
except for Alicia Keys. But okay. Except for Alicia Keys.
Oh, Alicia Keys. Oh, yes, yes.
And sing. Yeah.
By the way, a lot of my, especially my female piano students, also started singing and playing at the same time. And that was very enjoyable for them. So how did I get into vocal music? I was teaching at the local university here in Fairfield, and at some point we started a new department that focused on Indian music, from India, not American Indian, Indian music. And we had teachers coming from India, about 30 of them. I happened to be in charge of that institute of we could call music ethnomusicology.
Ethnomusicology. Okay.
Music from different culture.
Mm-hmm.
And that was enjoyable. I was studying with all of these 30 teachers. At some point I played tabla, which is a drum,
Okay.
Indian drum. But that interfered with my piano technique. It really couldn't be combined. So I switched to vocal music.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that because I didn't have a background in vocal music, I actually had an advantage because there were no bad habits, or what can we say? Not bad habits, but habits that were interfering with that particular voice culture from India. And so I went very deep into that, and then later developed my own style, inspired by the most ancient Indian vocal style called Drupad, and which is very deep and slow and meditative and healing. And so I developed my own style out of that called ancient voice.
Ancient voice.
Ancient voice. And I've been doing concerts with ancient voice for the last 25 years, and lots of recordings, lots of YouTube videos, and the point of that is not rapid notes or virtuosic ornamentations, but really a deep dive into frequencies and the purity of frequencies and the relationship between the basic note and the melody note. And some people like it, and some people don't like it so much. But I think those who like it feel that there's a deep healing value to it. So recently I've taken that up more again, and now starting to teach more and having rehearsals with people and having a lot of people involved on stage, like this stage, for example, at Golden Magnolia Sanctuary, where we're doing these things with many tamburas, these huge string instruments, and svamandala harps and vocal support and all that kind of good stuff.
Ancient melodies.
Ancient melodies improvised.
I see. Let me tell a short story of my impression of ancient melodies. So when I'm driving through the field, farming, and I'm in my tractor, tractors generally are in the key of F.
Oh, really?
And so most farmers don't know that. I'm not your run-of-the-mill farmer. So I like to put that throttle, this is my throttle hand, okay, right at where that F, where I know that F is. And then I will hum and begin to vocalize and match the tractor as I'm going through the field.
Wonderful.
And was I on F? You know, because I don't know for sure, but
I don't have
tend to be
perfect
correct.
pitch.
I tend to be correct.
Yeah, but it must be pretty much ingrained in your brain now.
Yeah, so I will do that for a time when I'm in the field driving, and it's just very healing to me, I feel, right? So in my own way, I do ancient melodies also. Okay, so
That's
maybe
great.
it's the case that lots of people do something that is in the realm of what you're talking about, but never really thought about it, because I wouldn't have thought of that until
the basic training we are doing is called Sadat's training, where we're just singing the fundamental note called Sadat or Sa for a long time, and that could very well be F. It just depends on if the person male or female and where is the voice, and then when we keep singing that note, we note that we can go lower and lower, and as we go lower, we get more expanded range higher.
As the voice relaxes, you can go lower and lower.
The deeper the roots go in the ground, the taller the tree can grow, just like the human voice. And there's a very strong connection between the human nervous system, the human body, and a tree, in my opinion. I think we are absolutely in family with each other. They have a whole different time. Their time is much more expanded and timeless than ours, but they're very much in our family, I think. So I'm sure the trees are singing to each other through the roots and through all kinds of communication systems that they have. And so that's great. You should be part of our rehearsals.
Yeah, I'm sure I would enjoy it. So in my own home, I play the banjo, and I will tune my banjo to an open tuning. I call it triple C. And what I notice then, it takes on a sound.
Triple C, that means that how many strings do you have on the banjo?
So there would be, there's 5 strings.
5 strings, so 3 of them are C.
Yeah.
And what are the other 2?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I would just have to do
That's
a little
very
bit
open.
of math. I would have to do a little bit of math in my head.
Okay.
Because I'm not an expert at
But
that
they are
stuff.
obviously in harmony with the C.
Yeah, one would be a...
So it's probably E and G, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
The C major chord.
Well, the bottom 2 are both C, and then you've
Yeah.
got the C on top.
That's interesting because the tambours and the harps we are using are tuned to 2 notes, D and A. And the reason we're using D is because we're having flute players sometimes, and it's easier for them to play in D. And that's that open tuning. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you got me thinking about my tuning, but I won't go there. But that that sound helps, and that evokes a lot of the singing that is more of like, I mean, if I were going to sing a song that is in that triple C, one of them is, wake up, darling Corey, what makes you sleep so sound? The revenue offices are coming, gonna tear your still house down. So that's an Appalachian song.
That's great.
Yeah.
A good singer.
Well, where that Appalachian music has its roots is, we know, somewhat in
the mountains,
yeah,
right?
in the mountains, right? But you go further back, and it's the African banjo.
The African banjo.
Well, in Africa, they didn't call it the banjo, but the roots of that instrument go back to Africa. And
oh, wow.
that is that resonates with me. And so when we talk about these ancient melodies and tapping into the healing properties of music, I like to think about the connection of our cultural ancestry in relation to what you said was your way of connecting with it. And you talked about the trees and how when you go low, you also go up.
Yeah.
I mean, these are different ways that are equally.
It's also very interesting
powerful.
in this country to see how there were some influences coming from Africa at some point for different reasons. We need not go into details about that. But boy, those influences had a huge impact on the music in this country. And we could even say some of the most powerful music coming out of this country came because of those influences from ancient cultures in Africa, right? That's interesting. Also, Dvorak wrote a symphony called the New World Symphony, inspired by the United States, and he was mainly inspired by the native Indian, the Native American Indian music in that symphony, and that is now almost considered the music of this country, which is good because the Native Americans came here first.
Yeah.
So again, ancient cultures influencing new music.
At Chautauqua Park here in town, have they ever had drum circles, like Native American drum circles? Or
in our time?
Yeah.
I don't know.
In this community, have you ever been to a Native American powwow?
Not in person, but I have definitely been very interested in them and very respectful of them. Also really love African drumming. I used to play piano with an African drummer here in Fairfield, and also some other groups doing African drumming. I love African drummings. And I love, of course, American Indian music. So
I have explored on my own how to incorporate Native American music into just playing my guitar or my banjo, and I have never really felt that I can do it justice, which is probably my own limitation. But have you played around with the piano to try to pull out what we know as, more of the I don't know, we could say indigenous sounds. So whether it be Native Americans or African or other indigenous sounds out of the piano, have you experimented with that?
I want to say two things about that. I have been doing Indian ragas on the piano, but the piano is pretty much completely out of tune with the natural frequencies. It's called equal temperament. Everything is equal.
Oh yeah.
And when I started the Indian music, I actually had a problem playing the piano because it felt so out of tune. But later I realized I could still play piano, so that was good. So those are the two things I wanted to say about that. I think we need to come to a conclusion now with our talk about music. What can we conclude?
So we started out talking about your early childhood experiences in music and what your interests in music developed into. But then we gravitated towards talking about later in life where you have shifted into the properties of music and healing and in community. And then we have ventured into talking about styles of music that pull in different instruments, and those instruments also being some indigenous influences that have shifted the way we think of music today.
Yeah,
so
we have.
That's a good summary.
We have definitely improvised on the topic of music, and we can conclude that music is very important for the human being.
For the heart.
For the heart,
Absolutely.
Because it has to do with frequencies, it has to do with vibrations, and it is pretty much impossible for human beings to keep on living without music, I think. Without art, without all those things.
Absolutely, the intangible things.
The
sometimes
intangible things,
so
the abstract things, the non-linear things, yes. Very, very important.
Yeah.
These are vitamins that are much more important to the human nervous system and the human being than food. I mean, we keep talking about we have to have so many vitamins, so many minerals, so many. No, we need to have fresh air, we need to have inspiration, we need to have music and art. That's more important than food.
I heard somebody say that with the opportunities, the artificial intelligence, the excitement around that it's bringing to the world today, that it could have the effect that humans realize how much more important the art and the community and the ethics are, because artificial intelligence, as far as we know, can't touch any of those things that are qualities of that make humans unique.
We are not talking about artificial.
Yeah.
That's a whole different discussion. We'll save that
we'll
for
touch
some other
upon
day.
that sometime. All right,
Okay,
thanks for being here with me today.
Thank you.